Welcome back. Of the five PDP governors who defected to the APC, you are the only one who's just rounding up your first time in office. Well, Governor of Kano State is also doing another first time in office. He's had one before. Would you be willing to forego a second term if that was the wish of the new party, seeing as there must have been some people who also had the same aspirations before you joined?
You see, for me, the price of making Nigeria better is not too much if we really have to sacrifice. I look at my participation in politics beyond my tenure as a governor. I look at my involvement, yes, by choice of providence, to be involved in the process that will transform Nigeria. It is beyond my tenure as a governor. It's beyond the tenure of anybody's stewardship. It is about creating a process that will sustain good governance for our people. If by choice of providence, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it possible for me to stay beyond this tenure, to continue to see how to engender good governance in Nigeria, I will say Alhamdulillah. But of course, don't forget, it's a struggle. It's a struggle beyond individual. It's a struggle beyond personal interests. And we must begin to allow selflessness to drive what we believe in that will make us a country. I think we should begin to think like that.
Still talking about politics, among other places you worked, you worked in the Guarantee Trust Bank for a few years before your political appointment. So I assume you know the GTB co-founder and former ACN vice presidential candidate, Mr. Fola Adeola, quite well. I'd like to believe so. What kind of VP would he have made?
Fola Adeola is a fantastic gentleman. For me, he's been a major role model in shaping who I am today. Because you see, at the time some of us were quite naive in the industry, they brought to fore some critical management strategies that are benchmarked against best practices and brought it to fore in the bank and allowed us to imbibe these things. They allowed it to sink into our blood like virus. And we began to live it. And that has shaped our perception to driving good management. So my opinion, if Fola had won that election alongside with his principal, I would have seen him bringing to bear his wealth of experience, which has definitely defined the current picture we see in Guarantee Trust Bank, brought to bear in driving the country. I see his experience in the private sector as very unique and would have been very useful in the public sector.
Well, he's been rather quiet on the political scene since losing the 2011 elections. How do you encourage people like that to continue to get involved in politics?
It's a two-way thing. I would rather look at the system should begin to bring people like that out. We have lots of people with huge human capacities just lying fallow. We've not been able to articulate a platform that will see their experiences being brought to bear to help shape direction of government, policies, and of course, evolving incentives that would make the system of governance a lot more embracing. I feel we should begin to look at platforms. Of course, one of them is the Economic Summit Group, and there are others that could be created that will begin to see those who have succeeded in different spheres, how they are brought together to help create platforms that will aid in driving for good governance.
You were one of the governors who voted for Governor Meche in the NGF elections. How do you feel when you see Governor Jack still claiming to be the chairman of the NGF?
I think it was not the right thing to do, especially when we allowed it to be reduced to voting. On consensus basis, yes, we would have argued here and there, but because we couldn't reach consensus and we allowed it to be reduced to voting, where everybody participated, I feel that we should have allowed that to be upheld on the basis of principle we stand for, especially on the basis of a process of which we are all products of. I feel that it has since left a wounded governors forum, weakened the forum, and has not allowed us to meet and articulate the basis for setting up the forum. Because the basis was supposed to be beyond partisanship. It was supposed to be a platform for us to bring together common platforms that affect all of us. It should have been a platform for peer review, where we isolate best practices in all the states, and we'll bring it to fore, and we'll make this available to everybody to copy from, so that ultimately, if we take best practices in health, in water, in energy, in security, and the economy, we'll begin to see how this will be replicated across all states.
At the last meeting of the Mechi faction of the Governors Forum, there were calls for the proper auditing of the Federation account. The CBN governor has since come out to insist that some money is still missing. Depending on who you're listening to and on what date, figures range from 10 to 12 to 49 billion. How is it possible for this kind of accounting error, if that's what it is, to be happening in this day and age?
I think it's more of a process thing, and because in my understanding, the NNPC is responsible for making the revenues from the sales of crude oil available to central bank. And if, from my understanding, if this is done on cash and carry basis, I feel we should not have a lacuna in remittances. I feel that we should always have well-remitted funds, and this should, from time to time, be reconciled without necessarily allowing for whistleblowing to come in from the warehousing agent. But to the extent that we will allow this to happen, it tells us that we've had a not too good process in accruing sales proceeds of sales of crude oil, because we should not have a gap ordinarily. To me, NNPC should be like a clearing house, so to say. Take oil, sell, collect money, and remit. And you are an agency of federal government. You have a budget on your expectations in terms of what you want to spend in the course of discharging your duty. And this should be appropriated for at inception. So the idea of you're accessing unremitted funds before they are accounted for, I have a challenge with that. If we agree that there's a federation account that funds are meant to go into, and if there's a cost of processing, it should have been incorporated at the budgeting time, because we should have looked at it from an empirical perspective, what the needs of NNPC is. And this should have been encapsulated in the budget for NNPC, not NNPC, from what I'm made to understand, accessing funds on their own and remitting what they want to remit. To me, I do not see that as a proper accounting. It's as good as saying my board of internal revenue, that is charged responsibility of accruing my revenues, begins to expend part of the funds before they are accounted for in the budget. It is unacceptable. Every fund must come into the federation account. And once it comes in, it is then appropriated accordingly. What is due to NNPC should be appropriated at that time, in my understanding. I don't think they should have access to funds that's not been accounted for and appropriated according to the appropriation law. That is my understanding of how it should be. The biggest mistake we'll make is to personalize these questions that are being asked. Once you personalize them, you have missed the Rubicon. You've missed it out. And you begin to address issues that are not relevant. So to me, it's not about people. It's about us as Nigerians. It's not about blaming one person. Don't forget, we've all come to inherit what is on ground. And our responsibility is to make it right. It's not about whether you are the one that caused it. No, we all know it's been there over a period of time. And if initiatives were not taken to change them, exigencies now are making it necessary for us to make those changes, so that we can begin to see how Nigerians begin to key in into evolving a governance process that would give them guarantee for good life.
Governor Abdulfatah Ahmed, thank you for joining us.
You're most welcome.
And I thank you for watching. Please join us next week when View from the Top returns. Between now and then, let's continue the conversation online at channelstv.com. Thank you again and have a good day.